What's the worst thing a friend ever did that made you realize they were actually a horrible person? Her dogs got out and went missing. I checked the local animal shelter page and thought, oh my god, here they are. She looked and said, no, I don't think that's them. I was like, what the hell? It's obviously and clearly them. Then my teenager came in from a creek trip where he had broken his foot, interrupting the conversation. I let it go so I could take him to the ER. Later, I realized she had either purposely turned them into the shelter or let them loose because she was renting, and the dogs had become inconvenient. This person has cultivated a huge animal lover personality, and everyone eats it up, but she is just selfish. I should have cut her off then, but I didn't. The final straw came when I was going through a very rough time in life and feeling low. She contacted me saying she wanted to hang out and that she missed me. I told her I had a nail appointment. She said, come on, I miss you so much, and convinced me that our nail tech, whom we both went to, would not mind if I canceled as long as I said I was not feeling well. I had originally found her and introduced this person to her. I fell for it, canceled my appointment, and made plans for her to pick me up. Then she texted me saying she was too tired to hang out, but she had also taken my now open nail appointment slot for herself because there was no better time for her to go. A-hole. Story 2. When I was 19, I started seeing someone and ended up married to him about a year later. He was a jerk and tried to cheat on me. I never found out if he did cheat, but it was more than enough that he tried. That's not even the person I'm writing this about. I was talking to a friend online when I was 21. I kept having typos in my instant messages, which frustrated me enough that I wrote something like, frigging keyboard, which was a joke we always made. Her response was, no wonder your ex cheated on you. I told her she was garbage and blocked her immediately. In all the social media years since, she's never tried to apologize. Rachel, you're still trash. Story 3. I had a friend who was one of those down on their luck, whole world against them, just needs someone to believe in them types. Funny how everyone who ever gave him a chance also happened to screw him over. He moved to my town. The job he swore was lined up fell through. He was drowning in credit card debt and owed the military money too. Naturally, none of it was his fault. I rented him a room in my house. Bad idea. I gave a mouse a cookie. He took over the entire place and acted like he owned it. When I started setting boundaries, he got pissed, moved in with his new girlfriend, and acted like he was doing me a favor by leaving. Oh, and he threw in some, you're a bad friend and you think you're better than me for good measure. On his way out, he left 30 holes in my walls, half the repairs, and abandoned a bunch of junk and trash. I offered to settle for a laughably low price just to never have to deal with him again. He said I was being unreasonable, so I kept part of his security deposit to fix his mess. He sued me, even after admitting in his own text messages that he messed up the repairs. Hey, D-head, if you're reading this, if everyone you meet is an a-hole, you're the a-hole. Take a hint from the trail of burned bridges you leave behind as you float through life playing the victim. Story 4. A close friend of 15 years had an affair with my partner. She pretended to be my friend through the whole thing. The last message she ever sent me was saying she was thinking of me the day my ex moved out. I didn't find out they were together until months later. My son had started calling her his other mama. From what mutual friends have said, she believes she is the victim of all of it. Completely delusional. Story 5. My second year of college, I had a friend group I sort of fell into because I was on my own. My best friend had moved away, and I hadn't made many new friends since I was working 7 days a week as a student athlete. 3 girls on my team decided to befriend me, and we became close. I really appreciated them. It all started falling apart when my coach announced there would be another captain. One of them told me not to run because I was too busy, so I didn't. They all ran, and I didn't. But I still ended up being voted captain. After that, they turned on me. They tried to publicly call me out at practice multiple times and even went to the athletic director to try to get me removed. I kept my position, but the season became miserable with constant bullying and gossiping. They were defiant toward me, and it was a really difficult time. Later, they apologized and we became friends again. One night, we went to a party. I usually drove because I preferred to be the designated driver and didn't like drinking. That night, one of them offered to drive instead. At the party, they kept handing me drinks and got me drunk. We were the last ones there when she offered to drive me and 2 football players home, guys who had repeatedly tried to get with me. I begged her to drop them off first since they lived on campus. She refused, saying everyone lived on campus anyway, even though the party was right next to it. On the way, she passed 2 campus entrances and still refused to drop them off first, even though I kept asking her not to bring them to my place. When we got there, she told them they could help me at my door. They asked me to come inside, and I said no. The other girl helped me leave through a back entrance so they couldn't identify where I lived. I never spoke to any of them again and actually transferred to schools that summer. She tried to put me in a situation where I could have been essayed. I'll never forgive her for that. I had a bad feeling about her from the beginning, ignored it, and learned my lesson. Never again. Story 6. Didn't tell me she was moving and wouldn't be able to make it to my wedding as the maid of honor. Before that, we had specifically scheduled my bachelorette party around her schedule. She didn't show up because she didn't have a dog sitter and wouldn't trust my husband to watch them at our house, even though we had a backyard. We eventually made amends, but I kept her at arm's length. Then she sent me a wedding invitation, which surprised me because she had only met the guy who was in the army a few months earlier. The week before her bridal shower, I texted her saying I was excited to see her and for her to meet my daughter. She immediately replied that the wedding was off. Okay, I get it. But again, she didn't even tell me beforehand. 6 months later, she was engaged to someone with a lot of money and 4 months pregnant. She's a mess, both physically and mentally. F her. Story 7. I had a friend in university who was a typical anime fan. We would hang out and watch shows together after class. He started dating one of our mutual friends, and his behavior changed completely. He became physically and verbally abusive, controlled who she could talk to, and was deeply manipulative. I also heard concerning things about him, including inappropriate fixation on anime characters, and trying to pressure her into wearing outfits she wasn't comfortable with. I told him directly that he needed to change his behavior, or I would stop associating with him. He didn't change, and they eventually broke up. Story 8. She was one of my best friends. We'd known each other since elementary school. We ended up working together in our early 20s. Boy, was that a mistake. At first, she had a boyfriend and wanted us all to be friends and hang out together. I couldn't stand him, but I went along with it. Then his friend, a real crepe, decided he wanted me. I made it clear multiple times I wasn't interested, but he wouldn't leave me alone. With her encouragement, she kept saying it would be perfect. 2 best friends dating 2 best friends, and I should just give him a chance. The guy made my skin crawl and set off every alarm in my head. Not happening. Ever. Then he got hired where we worked, and guess who started cheating on her boyfriend? Yep, my friend. The same one who wanted me to socialize with him and act like everything was fine. After pushing me to befriend her boyfriend, she now wanted me to be okay with her betraying him. I wasn't built like that. That was the start of hell at work. She went from my best friend, someone I could tell anything to, into someone cold, snarky, and rude. Her personality changed completely by the time I left. I barely recognized her. Then things got worse. A coworker, a flirty guy with a girlfriend, started talking to me. He said he was unhappy and the relationship was basically over. One day during a break, things turned intimate. I asked if he had ever cheated, and he told me to meet him after work. I did. We did it twice, which I don't take pride in. My mistake was telling the wrong person. A coworker I trusted spread it, and suddenly everyone at work knew. Women at work turned on me, called me a liar, and refused to believe me. The men mostly stayed out of it. Worst of all, my best friend didn't believe me. She didn't stand by me the way I had stood by her. She turned me on like everyone else. I quit shortly after. Ironically, later it came out that he had cheated with multiple people. His reputation collapsed, and everything I said was proven true. None of those coworkers apologized. My old friend never reached out either. She eventually married her original boyfriend. Turns out she pushed away almost everyone else too, and in the end, he was the only one left. The guy got fired for stealing not long after starting. I later heard she had a baby the following year. Sometimes I miss her, but not enough to go back. Story 9. My oldest friend's husband makes close to 7 figures a year. She is very cheap. She does not work and has little schemes to make money even though she does not need it. During the COVID lockdown at its height, she went to a food bank because they do not check income at all. I got so much free food. I mentioned that maybe a family who really needed it would miss out because of this. She said, "Well, you snooze, you lose." My wife and I both had jobs that stayed open during lockdown, and were trying to donate and help where we could while she was doing this. That was it for me. Story 10. When I was in college, I was essayed at a house party by a coworker. I was ashamed and did not report it, and I did not really know how to process it. Looking back, I think I was in shock. A few days later, I finally found the courage to tell someone I believed was my friend. She also worked at the same place, but we had known each other longer than we had known him. I thought she was empathetic at first, but she cared a lot about having many friends, and he was often the one hosting parties. While I was telling her, I could see her deciding how to respond. After a moment, she said, "I'm sorry that happened to you, but I hope you're not expecting me to stop talking to him. It is not like he has done anything to me." I was done after that. Story 11, I met up with a childhood friend. She had married, had a few kids, divorced, then remarried and had another child. She talked about her new husband adopting her other children, and they were waiting for the final court date. She seemed happy. 2 weeks after that conversation, she ran off with another man, moved across the country, and left all her children behind. The adoption papers were barely finalized. The husband ended up raising them. Story 12. When I was 7 or 8, my mom walked me to the bank a couple of blocks from our house and helped me open a savings account. The staff showed me how to use the little book to track transactions, and I started saving small amounts. For the next 6 months, I made tiny deposits whenever I earned a little money doing yard work for a neighbor or similar jobs. This was in the 1970s, so we are talking about $3 or $4 at a time. Eventually, I had saved about $80 and decided to spend about $40 on a toy I had seen on television. When I went to withdraw the money, they told me the balance was too low. I showed them my record book, but they showed me a withdrawal slip signed with my name. It was my father's handwriting. I just said, "Oh," and went home. He had a high-paying job, drove a Volvo, and had no issues with alcohol or gambling. The amount meant nothing to him, but he still did it. He was a mean and controlling man, and I never felt safe asking him about it. I never found out why. F you, Dad. Story 13. He admitted to his girlfriend 2 months ago that he had secretly placed cameras in bathrooms at parties to watch girls undress, including me. I had been to his parties many times and even invited friends there. He also gave guitar lessons at his house to my friend's children, and she has a 7-year-old daughter. He lost all his friends and his girlfriend within a month. We had been friends for 5 years. Story 14. We were close from childhood to our mid-20s. We grew up across the street from each other, and I considered him like a brother. We spent a lot of time together, hanging out, listening to music, and having drinks in the garage. Even after I moved out, we stayed close. Then, he tried to get my girlfriend at the time to cheat on me with him, right after I had confided in him. I found out and cut him off. It got worse later when he was arrested for being involved with someone far too young when he was 27. He still lives across the street from my parents, and I have not spoken to him since. Story 15. During the very early days of COVID, my grandmother died in an outbreak at her nursing home. It was the first hotspot in her county. My then BFF was posting all about the fake virus and complaining about how their rights were being infringed upon by being forced to stay home. They were already a SAH parent, and to wear masks. One of the last things I ever said to them was, "Wow, if my grandma knew the virus was fake, maybe she would be alive right now." Never even got a response. Good riddance. Story 16. He was kind of my default friend growing up because our parents were best friends. But over time, I realized he was a mean little jerk who liked to say really cutting things. In retrospect, he got that from his mother, who also loved saying snide things. By the time I got to high school, I was getting tired of his behavior. The final straw was when I started dating a girl he liked. I had no idea he liked her. He started saying things about me too. He also liked to insult other people, and I was done with it. By the time I was a senior, I was finished with him. He dropped out of college after 1 semester, drifted through life, and ultimately lived with his parents until they both died. I don't think he even had a job in his later years because he was so difficult. He also threatened his brother and sister when they tried to sell the house as part of the estate. Eventually, they took legal action. Because he had neglected his health for years, he ended up in terrible condition. I heard through a mutual friend that he is now assisted living at age 62. Story 17. I had these 2 friends, Nina and Liz. Nina's mother had passed of cancer 2 years prior, and Liz's husband had died of a sudden heart attack the year before. I met them after their losses and spent a lot of time listening and supporting them. I couldn't imagine such devastating grief. Then my own mom was diagnosed with cancer and she didn't make it. About 3 weeks after my mom passed, they had made plans for the 3 of us to get together for dinner, and I just wasn't up to it that night. I let them know. They insisted. I explained again, I wasn't up to it. Eventually, they were both on the phone with me saying they had scheduled this as a sort of intervention. I asked, for what? They said they needed to talk to me about my behavior. Apparently, they were tired of me grieving for my mom and wanted me to go back to being available to listen to their grief. 3 weeks have passed. I never spoke to either of them again. I understand it even less now that I've experienced loss myself. I will never understand that lack of empathy. Story 18. He cheated on his girlfriend multiple times. I was stuck by him anyway. When she finally left him, he changed completely. I didn't know him before that relationship, so I don't know if he changed or if that was who he always was. After the breakup, he became unrecognizable, petty, disrespectful, got on my face when I criticized him, stole food from me when I was struggling financially, and shamed me for not going to the gym with him. He became a completely different person. After years of thinking about it, I believe the version of him I knew was just an act. Once he didn't have someone to impress, his real personality came out. I'm glad it did because I ended the friendship. There was a time I thought we'd be friends forever. He felt like a brother. He taught me how easily that can change. Story 19. He ended our 10-year friendship by text, weeks after I was best man at his wedding. Just days earlier, we had dinner, laughed, and painted together in my living room. I thought I was doing the right thing by not trying to stop him marrying his abusive fiancée because I was afraid he would cut me off if I did. So I supported him, thinking I could be there if things went wrong. Our last photo together was taken right before the wedding. Then he cut me off anyway, with a long message listing things I supposedly did wrong as a friend and best man. Even his wife said she didn't fully understand it, but agreed with it. I suspected she had a strong influence over him. The message didn't even sound like him. It felt like something was written by someone who never wanted contact again. She destroyed a good person, and honestly, it damaged both of us. I don't trust people the same way anymore, including myself. Abusive people will burn everything down to get what they want. Story 20. I confided in my best friend about how I had been assaulted, and as long as I kept the name of the person anonymous, he said he would help me, listening, giving advice, and offering support. Then, one day, I let the name slip while I was talking, because I wasn't sure how he would react since they were also friends. Suddenly it became, oh, it couldn't have been that bad. He doesn't seem like the type. Are you sure this even actually happened to you? I feel like you're lying, but okay. It caused a huge fight. When we tried to talk again, I didn't get an apology, just, I don't want to pick sides. Yeah, a friend to everyone is a friend to no one. Bye. Story 21. My old friend turned into a sister-in-law. That situation was a drama on its own. We had a ridiculous argument over a bed loaned to me by my parents, and I should have left as soon as things started escalating. Instead, she told people I was manic, something she had been told in confidence by my mother, who was worried about me at the time. I was not manic. I have moderate autism. She also started scheming petty things, like convincing my little sister to cancel a lay-by so I would lose the deposit and even show up at my house during a planned trip to take the bed using spare keys. It was a massive overreaction. I no longer have a relationship with my brother because of it, but the peace of not dealing with her was worth it. Don't let friends get too close to family. Story 22. My brother was in a coma after a car accident, and I was struggling with the decision of whether to sign a DNR or keep him on life support. During that time, a friend who had been silent texted me to say she got the worst haircut of her life and was in tears about how bad it looked. She asked for advice on how to fix it, then ended with, "But anyways, how's your brother?" I never responded and never spoke to her again. Story 23. There was this kid several grades ahead of me in elementary school. He was always getting in trouble and going to the principal's office. Decades later, he contacts me through Facebook and says he always had a crush on me. I think that's weird. He was in like 6th grade when I was in 3rd, but whatever. I looked at his profile and he's wearing a khaki uniform that looks like maybe a janitor. He was pretty persistent in messaging me, and finally I asked what he wanted. He admits he's in prison. I ask how he communicates with me, and he says he has got a guard to smuggle on a phone. I explain I'm in a licensed profession, and this is inappropriate because it's illegal, and I want nothing to do with it. He says, "Sure, I understand. You were always such a good girl in school." I looked up what he did. Armed bank robbery. Years later, I guess he got out because he tried messaging again. I didn't open it. I checked his profile and he was living with a woman. It looked like one of those love after lockup situations, probably trying to find someone to give his parole officer an address. Someone eventually took the bait. I guess all those trips to the principal's office were foreshadowing. Story 24. My maid of honor. It started at my bachelorette party where she did everything about herself and then blew up at my childhood best friend for being a bad friend. When I tried to break it up, she started screaming at me and told me to find a new maid of honor. A K.A., my childhood friend. When I went to check on her later, she screamed in my face until I had a full-blown panic attack. After that, she tried to comfort me and apologized. Once I calmed down, she hugged me so tightly we fell to the ground. Then she tried to make a move on trying to kiss me and hold me. It was really traumatic. The next day, I tried to talk to her, and she said we were all drunk and it was nothing. I should have cut her off then. Then came my wedding week. She was still my maid of honor. She said she would be a little late for the rehearsal because she took a red-eye from Vegas from a work trip. She showed up 20 minutes late. And then, on the morning of the wedding, while we were getting ready and I was about to walk down the aisle, she asked me and another bridesmaid to come to the bathroom with her. Story 25. Had a friend for about 13 years who I always knew was a bit off, but I looked the other way. However, the last straw was when she just casually explained her scheme to frame her boyfriend for essay right after she had convinced him to co-sign an apartment all the way on the other side of the country. She was 29, and the poor guy was like 20. Had I known his full name or social media or number, I'd have tracked him down and shown him the conversation I had with her, but honestly, I couldn't find anything about him on her social media, so it seemed to me he just didn't have a social media presence at all. When I asked her why she was doing such a thing, she simply replied that she prioritized her survival, and that morality was ultimately gray when it came to that. Story 26. I had two friends, A and B, who consensually hooked up at a party. One of our closest friends, C, who was A's best friend, called everyone in our friend group individually to tell them that A had assaulted B. By the time the story got to me, I shut it down because it was completely untrue. C had even spoken to B beforehand, and he confirmed that everything was consensual. I told A what was happening, and C completely lost it on me. She stopped talking to me and took half of our friends with her. How they sided with her, I still do not understand. That took some serious mental gymnastics, but good riddance. I genuinely have no idea what possessed her to go that nuclear. Oh, and we were all in our mid-20s at the time. Story 27. My ex-best friend was amazing at first, didn't get me wrong. She introduced me to her boyfriend who was super funny and kind, so I never thought anything of it. The first night I met him, she and he were sitting on the couch. I was in a chair with my back facing them. I heard them start kissing, then making out. Then I looked back and they were getting a little too intimate. I freaked out and left the room. We stopped being friends after that. Then she apologized and said it was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. I reluctantly let her back in. It happened again a few months later while we were watching YouTube. Same position, same situation. We stopped being friends again. You're probably thinking there's no way I will let her back in again. I did. This time things were good for a while. We made some of the best memories of my life. Then she became obsessed with thinking she had BPD. She would get angry suddenly and expect me to calm her down because I was her favorite person. It became exhausting. The final straw was when her boyfriend came over while we were dog sitting. I was on my laptop and saw him helping her under the blanket. Later, she admitted it to me, then denied it, and said she was drunk. I ended the friendship. She still posts about me to this day. It's been 3 years. I'm much better without her. Story 28. I worked at a movie theater managed by my best friend's family. The whole crew was a band of misfits, but we looked out for each other. We got into trouble, but mostly just the same stupid stuff the average kid does in their late teens and early 20s. One guy, Tony, was like the big brother of the group. A little older, by a little older, he was like 26 to our 17, married and a really good guy. He'd drive my friends' little sisters to their practices if their mom, his boss, asked. We went over to his house so his wife could help us get ready for prom. He'd get onto us for dumb stuff, but he'd also be the first one there to give a ride or get us out of trouble. He was a stand-up guy and a young family man who took care of everyone around him. A few years later, the theater closed and we all went our separate ways. Then, one day, my best friend called to say Tony had offed his wife point blank and disappeared. Police found him hours later at a bar in another state with a confession note. He had been dealing with depressive thoughts and found out his wife was cheating, and he snapped. He pleaded guilty to murder and is serving life in prison. It's strange because he did something horrific, and his wife didn't deserve it, but I still struggle to see him as purely evil. So, I guess I didn't really answer the question. Story 29. They were married and shot their shot at me after I left the company. Their shot involved asking me to help them commit adultery, and they explicitly said they did not want their spouse to find out. That was the first thing I addressed when they brought it up. I was offended because they thought I would participate in that. This person also treated it like their lack of moral integrity was just a one-time mistake, like a small lapse in judgment. No, that is not how it works. Story 30. Best friend of 20-plus years played the long wait game and ghosted me when he got invited to my wedding. Haven't spoken in almost 4 years. Best friend nominated herself for some Amazing Woman award, lied about self-nomination, and I am pretty sure she lied about what an amazing woman she was, as I knew several of the other women nominated and they were doing a lot more amazing things. When she won, she talked badly about everyone else and sat there being less than humble. I had never seen that side of her, and it was totally against my morals. Story 31. A close friend bought his truck knowing he really needed money and I needed a car. It needed a lot of work, so we discussed what would be done and wrote it down. He is a professional handyman. I held back $500 to pay when the work was done, but it was worth more than that. I mostly bought the car as a favor and because I thought it would be fun to work on it with a friend, and I overpaid for it to help him out. He started avoiding me for about 3 months, and when I finally called him out on it, he just ghosted me completely. Story 32. My best friend for about 20 years was helping me out when I separated from my wife and through the quick divorce. He let me crash in the man cave above the garage, and I lived there for about 3 months. I helped him get financing through my job for his second house that he was renovating, so he wasn't around much and would just stop once a week to check on me. I later found out he was sleeping with my wife the whole time I was there. Story 33. The vast majority of them. I am lousy at making friends. Where do I begin? 1982. I was friends with a guy in high school for over a year. My best friend had a crush on him, didn't tell me, but he asked me out. I told her I was nervous about the first date, and she suggested that she and another girl go with us, so it was a group of 4. They talked about nothing I knew about, so I looked like an idiot. He started dating her, and I lost my friendship with him. Early 2000, my best friend was jealous that I was getting married and she wasn't. So she messed up the directions for the out-of-town guests, and everyone arrived late. Early 2010, I knew a girl who bragged about how much money all her dates had. This guy I'm dating owns this guy I'm dating owns that, etc. She never mentioned that she was one of 15 dates he had in a month. A guy in my building was a surgeon in the armed forces. We started dating, but since he wasn't a gazillionaire, I mentioned his profession to the friend. She got jealous, started flirting with him, and we broke up. She picked up a fight with me and stopped talking to me. She had a party and invited him, and not me. Circa 2022, a friend of 7 years, she was the skinny one, I was the fat one. My doctor put me on a special diet that I got used to, and I lost a lot of weight. She got angry because she thought my diet was insane, said I was a bad person now and stopped talking to me. We haven't spoken in 4 years. Other times I lost friends were when I was the friend who was responsible with money and they were irresponsible. They would ask to borrow money. They were super sweet when borrowing, but very bitter when they had to pay it back. They said I was selfish because they needed more money than I did, but they spent it on frivolous items. Then there's the endless couples who pretend they're your friends, but they want to set you up with men who are creepy, drunks, controlling, and phony. And if you go out with them once and don't like them, they scream at you. How come you didn't call my friend back? He liked you. And when you tell them why, they say you're too picky. The happily married, grounded friends are too busy with their families and travel, so I don't get to see them as often. Story 34, I've posted this before, but I had a friend growing up who I truly loved. Massively tall guy, brightest smile, gave the best hugs. He was my brother's friend at first, but ended up being someone you couldn't hang out with and not like. There was an age gap between my cousin and me, quite a big one. They would have met in passing since he spent a lot of time at our house and she visited often, but they weren't in the same age group at all. They finally met when he was put in jail for drugs and she worked there. They started dating after he was released and then they got married. Less than a month later, he offed her. Story 35. In the span of 6 months, I lost my brother to cancer. The pandemic started, I was laid off from my job working in a hospital on a COVID unit, and I became so depressed there were days I couldn't get out of bed other than to use the bathroom. During all of this, my friend at the time, who, in retrospect, had a pattern of manipulative and abusive behavior toward other people in our friend group, felt I was being a bad friend because I wasn't paying enough attention to them. They started talking badly about me behind my back, saying I was an awful and selfish person. I've blocked most of it out, but they said I had no compassion for others and had no business working in my field, and they actively tried to turn mutual friends against me. I know I probably wasn't a great friend back then, but I was also just struggling to survive. It felt like I was drowning, and instead of throwing me a lifeline, they got angry that I had fallen overboard. Story 36. My ex-best friend's older sister. We were teens. She was very close to me, but I always sensed she was a little jealous of the bond I had with her younger sister, who was only a year younger than me and who I was much closer to. At the time, her family had a complicated living situation, and since they lived far away, she started staying with us during the week because her school was close to our house. On weekends, she went home. One week while she was staying with us, she stole my phone and then pretended it was lost, even helping me look for it while I was panicking. She put on the fakest sad face and even cried. We couldn't find it for quite a while. Eventually, my 4 older sisters caught her since they suspected it early on but didn't tell me at the time. That was it for me. I still laugh when I think about it. Something was definitely wrong with her. Story 37. Back in 2016, my best friend at the time went through my apartment while I was in a psych ward. I had given him my keys to pick up his magic cards. He rummaged through my drawers and found my rental documents with my landlord's number. He called my landlord and asked if he would rent my place to him instead, using the fact that I was in the hospital as a reason I shouldn't be living there even though I always paid rent and utilities in full and on time. When I was discharged, I came home to a mess and an email from my landlord about the strange call from my friend, trying to take my home. I never thought I'd lose friends over the housing crisis. We get so desperate for stability that people start throwing each other under the bus. Story 38. I had a pretty close friend of about 15 years who was losing his job, so I got him into my union trade as an apprentice. After about 5 or 6 years, I watched him sell his house in a desirable area and buy a rundown acreage for far too much money, along with a partner who was clearly using him. He eventually foreclosed even though he didn't lose his job. As his life started falling apart, he began taking it out on me. Constant insults, personal attacks, and hostility that hadn't been there before. I tolerated it for a while until I didn't. Fast forward 6 months, he and the partner broke up and he apologized. I accepted, and things went back to normal for a few years. Then I bought a small mortgage. COVID hit shortly after, and his behavior started again. It became impossible to have a normal conversation. He would disagree with everything I said and twist himself into absurd counter-arguments. It felt like he was just unhappy and taking it out on everything around him. After another round of insults in 2024 while we were having beers on a summer day, I finally ended it. F you, Tyler. Story 39. A friend drove drunk and bragged about it with no remorse. Not just drunk, but blacked out and driving home multiple times. I had already tried to explain how irresponsible it was and told them I had lost a friend in a drunk driving accident. They didn't care. I tried to stay in the friend group and keep the peace while distancing myself, but I couldn't handle it. I cut off the entire group because I realized I shouldn't be the only one trying to stop someone before they hurt someone. Story 40. My next-door neighbor was a nice guy, but kind of a doofus and a bit mentally unstable. He was a muscular gym type, had failed in Hollywood, and later tried to become an LAPD officer, but failed the psychological evaluation. We were friendly for years, not really close friends, but after that rejection, he started clinging to me as his life fell apart. He lost his job, his girlfriend left, and his car got repossessed. I felt bad for him and still helped when I could. Driving him places, giving him rides, things like that. One day I found out my mother had died unexpectedly. I was up all night dealing with the hospital, my family, and funeral arrangements, barely stopping to process it. The next day, he knocked on my door, looked at me, and said, "Wow, you look like crap." I told him my mom had just passed away and I hadn't slept in 24 hours. He said, "Oh my God," gave me a hug, and then added, "I'm so sorry, but let me tell you about my day." Story 41. Someone I grew up with and was friends with had 2 kids in a marriage that didn't last. During the marriage, one of the children was removed from custody for failure to thrive but eventually returned to the parents. After the divorce, the grandparents ended up raising the kids. He went on to start a new family with someone else and had nothing to do with his first 2 children. I haven't spoken to him since. I can't respect anyone who does that to their kids. Story 42. I was friends with this girl for maybe 1 to 2 years in high school, and I really bonded with her over mental health struggles. She understood me like no one else at the time. She had some odd moments, which I excused because I figured she was young, struggling, and came from a difficult environment to justify her behavior because I genuinely cared about her as a friend. For example, she excluded me from my own birthday by taking our friends out and telling them I had other plans when the plans were actually with them. That hurt, but I moved on. Later, she got involved in illegal activities I couldn't support. I told her to choose between me and her boyfriend, and she chose him. That hurt, but I let it go. A few years later, when we were all adults, another friend told me they found out she and her boyfriend had groomed a teenager. Early teens. I don't know the full details, and I don't want to. I'm glad I got out of that friendship. I miss having that emotional support sometimes, but it wasn't worth what came with it. Story 43. He told me to buy an ounce, said we'd split it, then changed his mind after we smoked some. He bailed on me on moving day. Don't admit fault when driving. Manipulative toward women and idolizes Andrew Tate. Calls me to smoke and hang out, but shows up with nothing. Then leaves when he gets a call from a girl. Leaves messes at restaurants and doesn't clean up. He even bags his dog's waste and leaves it behind. The last straw was when I waited all day after we planned to go to the beach and he canceled at the last minute. Is that enough to ghost someone? Story 44. One of my bridesmaids dated my now husband's best friend. They broke up but still had feelings for each other. So I guess they stayed in a sort of friends with benefits situation without the physical part. She also kept another guy interested, but never fully chose between them. My husband's best friend eventually moved on. Then she slept with another friend in that group and dated him for years. At my wedding, she started a fight with him, accusing him of seeing S-workers because of a text from someone else. I didn't let it ruin my night. After that, she cheated on him with another close friend from a different group. We stopped inviting her to things after that. She later married her coworker. Story 45. I'm female and had a female friend from primary school through to my mid-20s who simply hated women. She saw every other woman as competition, was manipulative and unpleasant to her friends and partner, who she physically abused at least once. Never apologized for anything, but constantly played the victim and expected grand apologies for the smallest issues. Eventually, she just became exhausted to be around. She is the only friend I have ever cut off, and I've never regretted it. Life is much less stressful without her. Story 46. One time I went out with a couple of female friends from university. We were pre-drinking at one of their places, and I invited 2 of my male friends to join us. They showed up much later at the bar and were very sober all night, while me and the 2 girls were absolutely drunk. We went back to one of the girls' places and she wanted to do it with me, but my two friends stopped me, saying it wasn't right because she was very drunk and so was I. For about 10 to 15 minutes, they literally stood in front of me to stop it. So I went to bed. The next morning, my friends were gone. Years later, I found out that those same two very sober friends, after putting me to bed, went straight into her room and took turns. I only learned about it by accident, and I was completely shocked. Story 47. I had a miscarriage that permanently damaged my reproductive system and my ability to have children. I got pregnant afterward, but it was not viable and I had to have an abortion. A friend of mine also had her own fertility struggles, so I confided in her about the abortion and how difficult it was for me. Later, I found out she was telling my bosses at work that I had been pregnant multiple times and had several abortions. When confronted, she tried to claim I was the one who told my bosses that. Story 48. Oh, Kelsey, probably not as bad as most stories in this thread, but still bad. We were college friends. She was always a bit reckless and immature, but we were in our early 20s, so I didn't think much of it until everything fell apart. After losing her job for not showing up regularly, she moved back in with her parents to save money and get her life together. They were supportive. I took in her cats for about 6 months because they were allergic, and she agreed to pay for whatever they needed. She told her parents they were awful for asking her to contribute $200 toward rent and utilities at age 24. She was texting while speeding with weed and alcohol in her car after telling everyone she was clean. And she T-boned an elderly man who was miraculously okay. Her parents paid for her emergency surgery. She showed little remorse and seemed more concerned about getting arrested. She started seeing a new guy, decided she hated her parents, and moved to another state with him after only knowing him for a few weeks. I told her it was a bad idea, but she went anyway and cut me off, saying I was a terrible friend. She came back for her cats later and even asked for her money back. Not long after, she was hit with felony charges and complained about being in a holding cell with tweakers. Within a year, the boyfriend was stealing from her, using meth, wrecked his car, and had felony charges for strangling his ex-wife. She even bought him another car after losing her license while he burned through his money on drugs. About 9 months after getting to know him, she announced she was pregnant and said they had been trying the whole time. Now, both are felons. She has no license, earns barely above minimum wage, and complains about working hard and needing government assistance. Her biggest complaints are being disappointed she had a girl instead of a boy, and upset she was induced because she didn't want an Aries baby. She also neglected her cats, which just added to everything. I genuinely hope she and the child end up safe. Story 49. I had a friend in high school who nobody really liked that much, but he was a loyal guy. Offered rides if you needed them, didn't stand out too much. Just a decent guy, but not close to anyone. When my group of friends started hanging out with a group of girls, everyone developed crushes. Nobody liked him much, and he started sabotaging some of those situations and relationships without us realizing. He was feeding the girls lies to turn them away from us and toward himself. For example, on one birthday, I bought a small necklace for a girl, and he told them I got it cheap on eBay and that they deserved better. He eventually ended up with one of the girls after the friend group fell apart and later got dumped by her. Her friends in our group stopped associating with him too. Story 50. I had a buddy in late high school/early college who seemed pretty chill, just a bit immature. Once we reached drinking age, he started showing up to gatherings and binge drinking, then trying to start fights or getting handsy with female friends. We stopped inviting him pretty quickly. About 5 years after college, he showed up in the news. He had met a Russian woman online, got engaged, and brought her to the US on a K-1 visa. While she was still arriving, he started an affair with his best friend's wife. When his fiancée arrived, instead of breaking things off, he took her on a walk down a logging road, waited for her to walk ahead of him, and shot her in the back of the head. It took authorities over a week to identify her and notify her family because she had no other ties in the country. He is now in prison. Story 51. He was there for me at first when I was dealing with issues with an ex who harassed me, and we were good friends. Then I found out he had cheated on his girlfriend multiple times, tried to seduce an ex-friend of mine repeatedly, even though he claimed to hate her, and lied about it all when confronted, trying to paint her as a liar using deleted messages and screenshots. When he tried to deflect by saying he would get a bipolar diagnosis, I snapped. I left a short voice message and blocked him everywhere. Story 52. A buddy of mine moved away with his now ex-girlfriend and pretty much dropped out of everyone's lives. Then they broke up, he moved back to town, and we started hanging out again. I wanted to help him get back on his feet, so I got him a job interview where I worked, coached him, and put in a good word. He got the job. He didn't live far from me, so he offered to start giving me rides to and from work. I gave him above-average gas money for it. After about a year, I went through a rough mental health period and was signed off work with depression for about a month. He told me to just let him know when I was coming back. I gave him notice a few days in advance that I was returning, and the night before I was due back, he texted me saying he didn't want to give me rides anymore, that I was too far out of the way. It felt like he had wanted to stop earlier, but didn't say anything until one of the worst moments for me. A bit of notice would have been fine, but instead it felt like the rug was pulled out from under me. After that, he still tried to talk to me at work and make social plans like nothing had happened, clearly not realizing what it had done to me. Eventually, he stopped reaching out. Ironically, he later ended another relationship and moved away again. I do regret never telling him how much it affected me, but I doubt I'll ever see him again. Story 53. I was very excited to be a bridesmaid for a friend's wedding. I said yes, even though I was dealing with a serious autoimmune disease I didn't yet know about, which affected my health, energy, and appearance. Then I found out she was cheating on her fiancé. I can't be friends with cheaters. I don't trust them or respect it. I quietly got back from the wedding. She then went on the offensive and told horrible lies about me to our mutual friends. Even now, almost 20 years later, some of those people are still rude to me because of it. She was very good at manipulating people. Later, her fiancé eventually found out. After they were married and had a child, everyone knew except him. Somehow, I was still made out to be the villain. Story 54. My best friend was always a horrible person. I had an abusive, narcissistic single father who treated us with resentment and contempt, and I had almost no self-esteem. When I got older and started going to the gym, I developed real confidence for the first time in my life. I cut him out, my father out, and anyone else who was a drain on my life. This friend would constantly talk badly about everyone behind their backs to make himself look better. I lived with him for a couple of years when I first started going to the gym and began to realize how unhinged he actually was. He put cameras on the fridge because someone used his ketchup. The final straw was when we hung out after not seeing each other for a few years. He mocked a friend's child for wearing a skull-fixing helmet, even though the child's mother had decorated it with Hello Kitty designs. Then he mocked me for getting a push-button star car and said, "We should let everyone weak pass of COVID. It's not fair I have to alter my life so some elderly person can live another few years." He's a firefighter/EMT, by the way. Story 55. I definitely wouldn't call him a friend, but we shared a few classes and knew each other fairly well. From what I understood, he had bipolar disorder. He would go off over the smallest things, like his skin was paper thin. We mostly connected over art, and to his credit, he was genuinely a very talented artist. One day, I looked him up out of curiosity to see if he was still alive. I found out he had recently been arrested for tackling and attempting to essay a woman who was jogging. She managed to escape, thankfully. It was surreal seeing him in a mugshot. He was unstable, yes, but I never expected something like that. Story 56. I had a girlfriend in college who lived about 4 hours away after we graduated while I was in graduate school. After I finished grad school, she broke up with me. A week later, she was engaged. Several of my friends knew what was happening. I cut everyone off that day. I probably sounded like I had lost it to the ones who didn't know what was going on. Story 57. Coworker, but I had considered her a friend. She tried to say I did something I wasn't professional, but personal. This something hurt one of our mutual friends a lot. When I found out that our mutual friend was done with me, I immediately called her to find out what the hell happened. Long story short, we discovered our friend completely made it up. Why? I have no idea, still don't know to this day. I'll tell you what, the friend was crapping bricks when I told her I was calling our mutual friend to figure out what was going on. I guess she thought it would be like high school. Honey, I'm a grown man. I don't mind confrontation at all. That's when I realized that some people are just so vile that they want to hurt people for no reason. I got my revenge though, found out she was having an affair with someone in management, and went straight to the owners with an anonymous tip. Out on her ear in less than a day from me hitting send on an email. Story 57. My best friend, 32 male of over half my life since high school, recently crossed a line. I reconnected with an old coworker, 29 female, and the three of us hung out one night. While I went to get us a round of drinks, he decided that bragging about my very recent ex flirting with him while we were still together would somehow make him look desirable to my friend. He then nearly got us kicked out of a casino for smoking weed in the bathroom. Later that night, he openly mocked me in front of her because I mentioned the drive to her place was about an hour and 15 minutes. He said, "Bro, that drive was not even long. I do that every day to hang with her." Afterward, he slammed her with messages every day for 2 weeks until she blocked him. What a jerk. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.